Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today I'm going to show you how to create this classic candy cane design using my dark and light striped cup tutorial technique. I did that tutorial a few months back. I'm going to link it down below in the description box if you want to review that. You're also going to find all the products that you see in this video in the description box as well. You'll even find some discount codes down there. So that's enough chit chat for me. Let's go ahead and get started. So as usual, I'm starting with a fully prepped and sanded cup that we're just going to base paint this really pretty forest green. This is from Rustoleum. I'll have the name of this spray paint listed down below in the description box. And what we're looking for here is a nice light even coat. Might have to do 2 coats, but I'd rather do 2 than one heavy one with a bunch of drips. All right. And then after I get this spray painted, I'm going to let it dry for about 20 minutes or so in front of my space heater to help speed up that process. Now that my paint's dry, I'm ready to apply my glitter, and I'm going to be using epoxy as my adhesive for my glitter today. I've mixed 5 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm probably going to use less than 1 milliliter on my cup. It helps if your cup is slightly warm to the touch because your epoxy will spread on much smoother. And we want to try and get like all the lines out of our epoxy. So you want to spread this on as smooth as you can. You might want to let it sit for a few minutes after you spread the epoxy on to help those lines kind of smooth out. All right, and now we're just gonna let it rip with Fitz from Peachy Olive Glitters. This is just a really pretty fine green. You could use any color that you want your candy cane to be. Just remember that whatever you want your darkest color of the candy cane to be, aside from the pinstriping that we'll do later, that's what color glitter that you'll want to go on here. So if you're doing a red and white candy cane, you'd want to do your red glitter now. If you're doing pink and white, you'd want to do your pink now. All right. And so this is, I said earlier in my intro that I was going to use the same technique as I did in my black and white stripe tumbler. And that technique is just putting down your darkest glitter first and then coating that in epoxy so that when we go to do the white stripes, there's absolutely no chance that any of those dark colors are going to get into our lighter color glitter. All right, I let my glitter dry for about 2 to 3 hours, and now I'm ready to apply my first coat of epoxy. This first coat is about 30 milliliters. I'm just going to spread it on like I normally would. Use my torch to pop any bubbles, and I'm going to let this dry for about 4 to 6 hours, and then I'm going to go right over that with a second coat. Okay, that second coat is about 20 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm going to let that dry for about 8 to 12 hours before we move on to the next step. All right, our next step is going to be any kind of sanding that needs to be done around our top rim and the sides. We want to make sure our cup is completely smooth, especially at that bottom rim as well, before we move on to the taping and the painting part. If you need to do a third coat to get it totally smooth, I would recommend doing a third coat before moving on to this if your second coat wasn't able to get smooth enough, okay? Because we will see any kind of bumps and things through the paint after we do this. I've got 1/2-inch masking tape here, and I'm just laying that at a diagonal along the side of my cup. I want to see each end of the swirl from the front of my cup. Okay, so we need to angle our little candy cane swirl with the tape enough to where we can see both the beginning and end of that swirl from one side of the tumbler, okay? And then I'm going to take a couple smaller pieces of tape to use as spacers to place my next line. My next line will be exactly 1/2 inch from the first line that we created, okay? After I get that second line placed, we'll lift the little spacer pieces and move them in between the second and third line, and so on and so forth until we get all the way around our cup. You may need to do a little bit of adjusting. One of your lines might be skinnier on one side of the cup. That's okay. The reason I'm using 1/2 inch painter's tape is because The width around my cup is 9.5 inches. That means with 1/2 inch increments for each one of my stripes, I'm going to end up with pretty even spacing, okay? If my cup was, say, exactly 9 inches around, I could have gotten away with doing 1 inch stripes, okay? But I really like the look of these 1/2 inch stripes. This is a 20 ounce straight skinny from Craft Haven. And while I think you could probably pull this off on any shape cup, one without a taper that has totally straight sides is really ideal here because it's going to be the easiest to pull this off. All right, so once I get all my tape placed, I'm just going to trim around the bottom with my craft knife by placing my craft knife flush with my desk, holding it steady, and then running the bottom of my cup along the blade of the knife to evenly trim all the ends of my tape. Notice I did not tape off the bottom of my tumbler because we're going to paint the bottom white, okay? So after I've removed all that excess tape, I'm going to take this over to my paint booth and we're going to spray paint this with 2 light and even coats of flat white spray paint. We really want to make sure that we get a good solid even coat on this because this white paint is going to end up being a big part of our design. A lot of people ask me about sanding before spray painting and if you're going to see the sand lines through the paint. And if you buff out your sand lines with a finer grit after you do some of your major sanding, you should not see any sand lines through your paint, okay? If you see sand lines through your paint, then you sanded way too aggressively with a lower grit. We need to use a higher grit to smooth that out and you're not going to see those sand lines at all. All right, after I painted, I removed the tape while my paint was still kind of wet. You can see that I made some little accidents there. I forgot to film me removing the tape, which was kind of a bummer because it was super satisfying. But whatever, I'm just using some acetone and a Q-tip to clean up any parts where my paint bled through a little bit. And then I'm going to touch up any of the other paint accidents by spray painting some of my spray paint into a medicine cup. Make sure you're doing this in a well-ventilated area with adequate personal protection equipment. And then I'm just using, a regular little fine tip paintbrush to fill in any spots that might have gotten messed up. And then as soon as that was all dry and looking good, we were ready to move on to the pinstriping. Now, if you're not using regular glossy permanent vinyl or regular matte vinyl, I would recommend waiting to do the pinstriping until after you epoxy over your paint. Because if you're going to use metallic stripes or chrome metallic or even holographic vinyl for your pinstriping, you're going to see some of the bumps and stuff from the paint through it. But with this permanent vinyl, you can't really see it, especially once we epoxy over it. Okay, I'm using regular white vinyl cut with my Cricut using the shapes feature in Cricut Design Space. I cut the square shape at 11.5 inches by 0.10 inches for the white lines. And I'm just using these white lines on one side of my white painted stripes as a way to kind of crisp up those lines. Now, if you did a better paint job than I did, you could definitely skip this step. But I just think it makes it look so much cleaner and crisper, and any kind of mistakes that you might have made, you could just hide these with the lines. This permanent vinyl is nice and flexible. You will need more than one strip of vinyl to wrap all the way around your candy stripe, okay? And that's easy to do. You just trim at the seam with your craft knife there. Make sure the seams match up nice and clean, and then trim off any of your excess vinyl again with your craft knife there, okay? And I did this all the way around the cup with the white, again, only applying it to one side of my candy stripes, because on the other side of the candy stripes, I'm going to use this absolutely gorgeous cherry blossom pastel pink vinyl from Sicer. I found this at Michael's. I've never seen this color before. I must have been living under a rock, but it was so perfect for this project. I cut these strips at 11.5 inches by 0.20 inches. Okay, so 11.5 by 0.20 because I wanted these ones to be a little bit thicker. Okay, and I just put those on the other side of my painted stripes. Again, yes, you will need more than one strip to make it all the way around, and trimming the excess as we go. Once I got done with the baby pink lines, I went in with these like fuchsia hot pink lines. This is Oracal 651 in the hot pink color, and I cut it with Cricut Design Space, again using the shapes feature, with a square sized at 11.5 inches by 0.10 inches. Okay, so same width as I did the white stripes. I think I might have even cut these at 0.15. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's 0.10 because these are pretty thin. And the fun thing about this design is you could use just any kind of color combinations. I even thought like a cream white with like a deep red burgundy and maybe, you know, maybe some gold lines or something would be really pretty. I don't know. I just love this. I want to make a whole bunch for Christmas because they're so fun to make and so cute. And then once we've got all that vinyl laid down and all the excess trimmed off nice and neat, we're ready to epoxy over this. Now I am going to put a little bit of glitter into my epoxy. I've got 30 milliliters mixed here, and we're going to use my favorite Brite. This is a fine white glitter from PG Olive Glitters. Not too much of it. Be pretty conservative, okay? Because we can always add more. We just can't take away. And we don't want to put too much on there to overpower the colors, okay? We want to be able to see all the colors through the glitter that we're going to be putting over this. So mix the glitter in really well. Make sure we've got it all evenly distributed through that resin. And then I'm just going to epoxy my cup like I normally would. Okay, so we're just going to spread it all over, make sure everything's nice and evenly coated, hit it with a torch to pop any bubbles, and I'm going to let this one dry for about 8 to 12 hours before we move on to the next step. For our next step, you're going to want to sand around that top rim and expose a fine line of stainless steel, which is what I normally always do, but I forgot to do that in this video, unfortunately. Mainly, we want to do that before we put on our final coats of epoxy so that our final coats adhere to the outer rim rather than the very top rim where it's more vulnerable. Anyway, for our decal today, I designed this myself, just real simple. It says Jingle. I sized this at about 6 inches long by 1 1/4 inches wide. This is just gold chrome vinyl from the Vinyl Cottage shop. I will have it linked down below, layered over some hot pink Oracal 651. So I cut the pink square in the same shape as the design that I made here. I will do a tutorial for this decal if you guys want a more like in-depth video on how I designed this. It was super simple and easy to layer. So after measuring twice, so I only have to cut once, I am going to carefully pull back my paper backing and apply my decal. You'll notice that I used some overhang of my transfer tape to anchor the decal onto my cup while I measured and situated everything. And then when we pull off our transfer tape, we want to pull back rather than pulling up to avoid any kind of air bubbles from popping up. All right, and then once I got that down there, I am ready for my final coats of epoxy. This particular cup took 2 final coats, as usual, before it was totally done. But that's it for this tutorial. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was so fun to make. I want to make more of these if I have some time this season. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like my video, please be sure to give us a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I upload new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. And if you want to check out my new Flynn Sisters Home and Lifestyle channel, you can find a link to my new second channel down in the description box, where we're going to do all kinds of holiday decor, attainable home design, reliable product reviews, and more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.